Hello guys, as has become a tradition on this channel, every year I like to take a close look at Samsung latest premium OLED TV in a compact size. The kind of TV that can easily fit on a smaller desk and setup, while still giving you the full TV experience and even working as a serious PC monitor and for gaming consoles. And this year is no exception. After spending a whole year with the previous 2025 S90F 42-inch. Today we are moving on to Samsung new S90H 42-inch OLED, which came out in 2026. In this video, we're not only going through the unboxing, this is going to be a full deep dive review where we cover design, Tizen OS, smart features, AI features, all the important settings, image quality, PCUs, console gaming, and much more. So without further ado, let's get to it. Now, given that there are many models variations depending on the region, the exact model I got is QE42 S90H AEXZT. Inside the box, we find this big bag full of accessories. So let's check everything that comes in it. First, we get this promotional guide that helps you choose the best soundbar or speaker setup for your Samsung TV across different tiers. The Q series, which is usually the more premium home cinema lineup, the S series, which focuses more on compact and slim designs, and the B series, which is more affordable, value-oriented lineup. We also see Wi-Fi speakers with some interesting designs. Now, the benefit of using these is that you get Samsung Q Symphony, which can combine the TV speakers and the soundbar into one more immersive sound system with Dolby Atmos support. Something interesting I found in the user guide is this section showing how to actually turn off the TV microphone. So if you ever accidentally turn it off, or if you simply want to disable the microphone for privacy, the guide here shows you where the switch is located on your specific model. By default, it should be on. And here is the solar cell smart remote. It has a very simple and minimalist looking. It doesn't have gyro or pointer style motion control, so navigation is done with the directional buttons. On the back, you can see the solar charging panel. So with just some light in the environment, it can recharge itself. There is also a USB Type-C port at the bottom if you want to charge it manually. If we put it next to the S90F remote, I noticed a few small detail changes. As you can see, it is ever so slightly taller and wider than the previous one. It looks slightly more full, almost like there is a small bump, even though the battery capacity appears to be the same, 200 milliamps per hour. So it seems Samsung made some small internal design changes to it. We also get Samsung older generation smart remote. Now keep in mind that this could be region-based. I heard from some of you that this remote was not included with your Samsung TV, but at least with my unit here, how they do it in Europe, Samsung still included inside the box. Two batteries are included as well. We also have a common interface card slot that you can install on the back. You can put your card inside, which can be useful for unlocking encrypted pay TV channels directly on your TV without needing a separate set-top box or decoder. Here is the power cord that comes with it. It's 1 meter long. And here are the desk stands. They have a clean, screwless design, so you don't need to use any screws. You just slide them into place and push them upward with a bit of force until they lock in properly. If clearance is an important factor for you, the stands are 20 cm long, so make sure you have enough space. They also elevate the TV by 7 cm, so if you want to install a soundbar underneath the TV, you have 7 cm of height available. We also get one clip that can be attached to the desk stand, but oddly enough, it came with only one of them. Usually you would expect one clip per stand, and it was the case for the last year S90F. And here are the exact full dimensions of the TV for your reference. In terms of build quality, I can't judge everything yet, but from my first impressions, it feels pretty tight and solid. In the past, for example, I have used some Samsung TVs and monitors where the back panel flexed a bit, but this one feels more rigid, more tightened, and overall more solid. Like even when I try to brace it, it's pretty solid. And here in the specs, you see that our model has 20-watt total sound output with dual channel speakers and 2 woofers, which is pretty decent for a compact 42-inch TV, and later on we will be testing it out. It shows here that the typical power consumption of the TV is 52 watt with a maximum power consumption of 125 watt, so it can scale up quite a lot. The power cord connects neatly on the back right side directly to the internal power supply, and the whole setup looks cleaner and more sleek. After removing this label, we can access here the common interface card slot. For ports, we get the following: 2 USB ports. One is rated at 5 volt 0.5 amps, which is enough for simple USB devices like flash drives. The second one is marked as HDD 5 volt 1 amp, meaning it can provide more power. So it's like better suited for external hard drives or devices that need extra power from the TV. Then we have 4 HDMI 2.1 ports supporting 4K up to 165 Hz, which is honestly impressive for a TV. The third HDMI port also supports eARC, so you can connect a soundbar or AV receiver and get high quality audio directly from the TV. Then we have an optical audio port, LAN, and antenna connections. You can see the disk stand mounts. They are already pre-assembled, and because they are precisely shaped, installing the disk stand is super easy. They almost slide into place by themselves. After that, you just need to push the stand upward until you hear a click. Don't worry if it feels like it needs some extra pressure, that is actually normal. Just make sure it clicks into place properly so the stand is locked in firmly and the TV feels stable. Instead, if you are interested in wall mounting it or mounted on a desk arm, the base amount you need is 200 x 200 mm with 4 M8 screws that are 28 to 30 mm long. Now make sure the screws aren't longer than that, otherwise they could penetrate the panel and damage it. So be extra careful about the length of the screws that you are going to use. Alright, now I'll set it up on the desk. Now it's actually nice that Samsung put a protective plastic layer on the screen to avoid shipping damage or dirt. So make sure you remove all the peels from the screen, frame, and Samsung logo. Now here I want to show you how I used the included clip to manage and organize my cables. As a bonus, I also installed a Philips Hue back strip. This one is actually made for 32-inch monitors. Now the reason I didn't install a bigger Philips Hue strip is mainly because Philips does not make a 42-inch version for TVs. The smallest TV version they offer is made for 55-inch TVs. But technically speaking, a 55-inch Philips Hue strip can still work on a smaller 42-inch TV in some cases, because the strip usually covers the top and the 2 sides, not the bottom. So if the back of the TV allows it, you can extend the strip a bit to the bottom and make it fit. I actually managed to do this before on a 42-inch Samsung Neo QLED TV. As you can see here in this video, I installed the 55-inch Philips Hue gradient strip on that 43-inch TV, and it worked because the back design was flatter and easier to wrap around. But with Samsung 42-inch OLED TV, including last year S90F and this new S90H, it's actually harder to do that because the back has a very particular design with a raised area in the bottom like center. And the position of the 2 stands makes it also difficult to wrap a bigger strip cleanly around the TV. So with this TV back design, it was not practical for me. That is why I went with the 32-inch version instead. And honestly, it's not that bad at all, like for adding some ambient light behind the screen. Now, one very big thing that stands out about this TV screen is the coating. Honestly, this is by far one of the best anti-reflective matte coating I have ever seen on a TV. Up until now, Samsung usually reserves this kind of advanced anti-reflective coating for its more premium flagship models like the higher-end QD OLED TVs. While for example, last year S90F 42-inch, the one that I used for a year, had a glossy coating instead. And I absolutely loved the deep pitch black contrast it gave in darker environment. But this year, the S90H 42-inch gets a more premium screen treatment, and you can really feel the difference. Of course, some people may still prefer a glossy coating for that pure black look, especially in a completely dark room, but this matte coating has serious advantages too. This makes the TV much easier to use in the bright rooms, especially if you have it set nearby a window. Anyway, we will see later on how to fix the image once we turn it on. So let's do that. To set it up, you have two methods. You can either do it directly on the TV using the remote, or you can scan the QR code shown on the screen and continue the setup from your phone. If you have a Samsung account, you can log in so the TV gets registered to your account for warranty and device management. It also allows you to back up your settings and restore them later if needed. As you can see, Samsung is also pushing its Samsung Vision AI feature here. So we get AI Companion, which you can access by pressing the AI button on the remote. And we will check that in more depth later. The TV also supports voice assistant control or hands-free use, plus several AI, picture and sound features, and Now Brief. Now Brief is a new smart mode that can detect your presence and automatically wake the TV up to show some personalized and useful widgets, all without touching the remote to turn it on. We will also check this in real life later on. And that's it for the main setup directly on the TV. Alternatively, if you scan the setup QR code with your phone, the process is pretty much the same. So whether you set it up directly on the TV or through your phone, the whole process is simple and straightforward. Now the TV ships with the latest version of Samsung Tizen OS, and honestly, this is by far the best version I have ever tried on a Samsung TV. For example, we now have the tabs on a top bar instead of the sidebar used in the past versions. To me, this feels much better because navigation is easier and more intuitive this way. Overall, the Home tab combines shortcuts, shows, sources, and apps all in one place. On the previous models, for example, I sometimes noticed lag while those cards were loading, but here, even from the first scroll, everything feels snappy and responsive, like super fluid. The next tab we have other than Home Dashboard is called Live, which has your local provider, live channels. Also, it has Samsung TV Plus. Samsung TV Plus is actually free. The next tab we have is Games, where you can play games through cloud streaming services directly on the TV. To personalize the experience, it asks what kind of player you are: a casual gamer who wants simple and fun games, or a dedicated gamer who wants more AAA titles and a more tailored feed, or even an all-around player who wants a mix of everything. Then it shows the cloud gaming services like Game Pass, GeForce Now. Each service has its own catalog. Next, you can choose to connect a controller. Other than the virtual gamepad, it supports many popular controllers like Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, Amazon Luna, and others. Honestly, I also like how Samsung changed the navigation experience for the gaming tab. It shows featured cards on the big screen and it feels really nice. You can access your cloud services here easily, and it's also very smooth and fast. You can also log games based on age. Now with that done, let's switch to the Daily tab, which acts like your portal for workouts, hobbies, and other useful preloaded apps. We have like SmartThings by Samsung, which can control your smart devices across the whole home. And also we have for the first time Google Photos that is actually supported now. Now this is the first time I have ever seen it on a Samsung TV, and also it's preloaded. I also see Fender Play, which is an app to learn musical instruments, and plus I can see like some kids shows. It also supports Microsoft Copilot. We also have an app for meditation, Also, as you may already know, with these cutting-edge Samsung TVs, you get full Philips Hue support built in. This means you don't need an extra HDMI sync box to sync your ambient light strips. In my case, for example, I already have a monthly subscription, so I can simply restore it. You can also purchase the service once per TV, but personally, I prefer the subscription option. Once it's connected to your Hue bridge, the setup is basically done. It's like very mind-blowing simple. And from there, you can control the brightness as well as intensity, from subtle, moderate, high, and all the way to intense. There are also three modes: video and game, sync with what is happening on the screen, while music mode, sync based on the playing audio. You can also choose to start synchronizing automatically as soon as the TV turns on, which avoids manual activation. In the Daily tab, you can also connect your Samsung Galaxy Watch to track your workout while using the TV. This way, the watch works together with the TV to track your exercise more accurately and show your workout data directly on the screen. The next tab we have is apps, where you can install apps available on the store, and here too, Samsung has made a good change to the layout of it, with everything organized nicely. Before, I was always confused about where to install apps. Now, thanks to having this dedicated tab, it feels much easier to access. It has like categories, auto updates for apps, and a manage section where you can manage installed apps, add them to home, delete or lock them, and also check available storage. Now you may be wondering what the Samsung Vision AI button is all about. Here you can see the Samsung Vision AI Companion Hub. It opens with this beautiful dynamic background. The interface is built around AI cards and suggested prompts. It can show trending topics, sport-related prompts, match summaries, news cards, and other suggestions you can open directly, also in spoken responses. For example, let's click this match speculation prompt about Argentina vs Austria. As you can see, it gives an AI-based prediction and also links some YouTube videos by creators. So it becomes a fun and easy way to interact with the TV instead of just browsing normal apps. We also have quick access to AI services like Copilot and Perplexity. I also see we get a 12 months of Perplexity Pro for free, which is a nice bonus. And I like the fact that it gives a small live preview of what you are currently watching on the top corner. So in summary, AI Companion feels like a smart area for interacting with the TV in a faster and more conversational way. Every time you open it, it refreshes with different backgrounds and prompts, which makes it feel more alive. Now let's check what we have under connected devices. Here we can check our sources and connected devices and switch to them easily, and setting up a universal remote to control soundbar and the TV at the same time. Then we have search, where you can search for TV shows and so on. With all of that covered, our tour of the Tizen OS dashboard is finished. When you open settings, you can see that even the settings menu layout has been refreshed. It almost feels like a Galaxy phone quick panel now, with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth shown at the top, followed by quick actions buttons, without having to dig through multiple menus. This makes navigation much easier. You can also press Edit to move the buttons however you like, in the way you prefer. And you can check if you have any notification. Other than settings, we also have a Smart Things button for easy access to devices and control, as well as numerical and color buttons. Now, before digging into the advanced settings, I would like to show you the multi-view feature we have. This allows you to display two screens at the same time. In my case, I have my PC connected through HDMI on one side and the YouTube app from the TV on the other side. The only caveat here is that in multi-view, the screens are limited to 60 Hz and game mode is turned off. You can create your own layout instead of only using the predefined ones, choosing between PIP or side-by-side mode. For the first screen, you can choose things like TV cable or antenna, an HDMI input, or Samsung TV Plus. For the second screen, you can choose a smart app or a feature like YouTube, internet browser, smart view for phone screen mirroring, a laptop as a second display, or even a connected webcam. The main limitation is that you cannot show two external input sources at the same time, like two HDMI inputs together. It only allows one external input combined with a TV app or smart feature, and you can also save your layout for easier access later. After that, you can adjust the layout by changing the screen size, expanding or shrinking the window, switching to PIP view, moving the small window around, temporarily maximizing one window without exiting multi-view, and switching between the two windows. You can also change the input on the go. If, for example, I select the input itself, like here, PC control, I can adjust the image settings for that input, like brightness, colors, and so on. You can use dual audio, adjust the volume balance between the two sources, mute one source, or use a Bluetooth speaker. So overall, multi-view can be a very useful feature. I just wish it supported two HDMI inputs together, because that would make it even more powerful. Let's now go back to the quick menu and open all settings to see what is packed inside. Let's start with the picture section. By default, the picture mode is set to AI optimized. We also have AI customization. Now when you choose AI optimized, you can still access the expert settings such as brightness, contrast, sharpness, colors, and all the possible settings found. So choosing AI optimized picture mode does not lock the expert settings for image refinement and personalization. But however, when you choose AI customization, it's a different route. First, to customize it, you need to head to Advanced Features, then AI Mode Settings, then AI Customization Mode Setting. This setting is only unlocked when you have the picture mode set to AI customization. Here you can train the AI based on three different categories: sport, movie, and general scenes. You train it based on how you like the image, whether for contrast, colors, and so on, all based on your personal preference. It shows four images to choose from in a sequence of three sets per category. Based on the image you select, the TV tailors the picture contrast color to your taste. But keep in mind that with this mode on, when you go to expert settings, while brightness can still be controlled, but contrast, color, and contrast enhancer are going to be locked. You still have access to other settings like shadow detail, color booster pro, color space, white balance, and so on. So, when choosing AI picture mode, each mode serves a different purpose. AI optimized does it automatically based on Samsung trained AI while still allowing full adjustment by the user, while AI customized uses your own trained selection and locks some picture expert settings. Here is a small comparison I made between having AI picture mode off versus AI optimized versus my AI customized profile. Let me know down in the comments which one you believe looks the best. But anyway, what if you would like to have the traditional non-AI picture modes? You need to head to AI mode settings and turn off AI picture settings. It allows you to do that while still keeping the AI sound features active. So this way you can turn off the picture AI features independently. After doing that, when you head to picture mode, you can see we have standard, dynamic, echo, movie, and filmmaker modes, which are the typical modes we have on Samsung TVs. Now outside of the picture mode, you can also use eye comfort mode to be activated automatically based on your selected start and end time. This is useful especially at night, and you can also control the intensity level between low, standard, and high. We also have smart calibration, which uses your phone like a Galaxy phone or even iPhones that support face recognition in order to calibrate the TV image. Now, one cool thing that really stands out with Samsung OLED TVs is found in the panel care section. Not because other brands lack panel care features, but as far as I know, Samsung is one of the only OLED TV brands that allows you to completely turn off the pixel shift feature. Pixel shifting is meant to protect OLED panels by shifting pixels every few minutes to move the image slightly and help avoid static retention and burn-in situations. But honestly, this feature can be very frustrating, especially for productivity and PC users, or in any situation where the edges of the image are important. Because the picture shifts slightly, small parts of the screen can get cut off. On PC, you may end up with a clipped window taskbar, for example, or like a clipped desktop icons or other elements near the edges. It can also be distracting when the image shifts while you are focused on the screen, because you can definitely notice the movement. Personally, I completely prefer having pixel shift off, especially because my experience with last year S90H 42-inch was very positive, even with this option disabled the whole time. I used that TV for a full year with pixel shift turned off, and I never went back. I never had any burn-in, image retention issues, even when keeping the screen static on the desktop while working for hours at a time. For me personally, I don't see much value in keeping pixel shift on if it affects the way I use the TV, especially for PC and productivity use. Of course, you are free to use it, and some people may prefer keeping it enabled for extra peace of mind, but it's really cool that Samsung gives you the option to turn it off if you are like me, finding it distracting. Anyway, we also have adjust logo brightness, which dims static areas like Windows taskbar or like logos or other static elements of the image. You can have it off or have it dim static areas a little by choosing low, or more aggressively by choosing high. I honestly prefer having it off too. I also used the S90F like this for a year and never had any kind of issues. So for me, having the best experience is top priority. Finally, a useful feature we have is pixel refresh. This feature can fix a lot in cases where you ever get image retention, temporary remarks, or any panel-related issues. You may do it periodically even when it's off, silently. Still, you can initiate it manually on the next turn off or immediately. So to sum it up, Samsung OLED panel section gives you options that help with panel longevity, but while also giving you the freedom to avoid an experience you do not like. I personally appreciate having the ability to turn these features off natively and easily without breaking warranty or resorting to modded OS tweaks. Alright, now let's get to the big part of image quality, the expert settings. We have brightness, and it's nice that now we get control up to 100. Before, it used to go from 0 to 50 maximum. So now it feels like a better brightness scale with more precise steps. Contrast goes up to 50 and I prefer it this way. Sharpness is 10 by default and I have color set to 25. Tint is at the default setting. This TV also has Auto HDR Remastering Pro, which is Samsung feature that tries to remaster SDR content into an HDR-like image. It uses object-based analysis to detect different parts of the scene and enhance them in real time. And honestly, this can make a big difference. The before image can look a bit flatter, like a bit more static, dead, and more washed out. While with Auto HDR Remastering Pro turned on, the image immediately feels more alive, highlights become brighter, objects stand out more, colors look richer. It feels like the TV is giving SDR content a fresh layer of contrast and energy. Bright areas pop more, and darker parts feel deeper. Of course, it's still not the same as real native HDR content, but for SDR videos, TV shows, it can make the image look much more beautiful, vivid, and enjoyable. For me, this is one of those features that I will definitely keep on, and it can work on any kind of content and source you have playing. And since we are currently playing SDR content, HDR tone mapping is naturally going to be disabled. But when you play HDR content, you can choose between static and active. HDR tone mapping is basically how the TV adapts HDR content to the brightness capability of the panel. With static, the TV follows the HDR signal in a more consistent and controlled way. In my experience, This gives a more natural and balanced image, with better overall consistency from scene to scene. It may not always look the brightest, but it usually feels cleaner and closer to how HDR should look. Active mode, on the other hand, is more aggressive. It tries to make HDR look brighter and more impactful by boosting highlights and brightness more dynamically. Sometimes this can look more impressive, especially in the bright scenes, but it can also make the image feel less accurate, slightly overprocessed, or too lifted depending on the content. After going back and forth and doing a lot of comparisons, I realized that static is the better option, at least for me. Sure, sometimes active may look brighter or more eye-catching, but for everyday use and for a set it once and leave it approach, I believe static is a much better option. We also have another option called peak brightness, which adjusts the highest level of brightness to increase the brightness range. It really does a great improvement, especially in highlights and bright areas. So I recommend keeping it on high. We also have contrast enhancer, which goes from off, low, and high. Some people may debate with me to keep this option off or low, but in my personal experience with this TV, also like S90F from last year, I feel like having it set on high gives the image more depth and helps objects stand out more by enhancing contrast. At least for me personally, it feels this way. Of course, it comes down to personal taste, but that's how it feels to me after trying all options. Some people may prefer to have it disabled or low, but for me personally, I'm finding it the best set on high. Next we have is shadow detail, which can brighten the darkest part of the image. I usually keep it at the default value of 0. Depending on the content, we can also change gamma, and we can also adjust the gamma level. We also have fill mode, and this is mainly useful for interlaced sources like some broadcast TV channels or older HDMI signals. In most modern 4K streaming, gaming, or PC use, you probably will not need it, and depending on the source, it may even be locked. Color space allows you to change the color space between native, auto, and custom, and with custom, you can change the color offsets based on your preference. I usually keep it on native. We get to another one of my favorite features, which is none other than Color Booster Pro. Color Booster Pro uses AI to adjust color intensity dynamically. The interesting thing is that it does not just apply saturation over the whole image and call it a day. Instead, it analyzes the scene in real time and enhances the areas where color pop can actually improve the image further. So it feels more controlled than a normal saturation slider. It uses Samsung Trend AI processing to make colors look richer and more vivid in areas where it's actually needed, so not on the whole image, as you can see, without making the whole image look overly boosted. This is why I really like it and I recommend setting it to high. Based on my experience with Color Booster Pro set to high, the best range for the color slider is around 20 to 30, depending on the kind of content, but I wouldn't go like further than 30 to avoid oversaturation, or less than 20 to not have a very washed up colors. We can also change color tone for a warmer or cooler image. I prefer keeping it on the default standard setting. To me, the image does not feel too cold nor warm. It feels ideal for my taste. We also have white balance for finer tuning of RGB offsets and gains. And we have picture clarity settings which help reduce blur and judder. There is an auto selection that handles it automatically, off, or custom, where you can manually adjust the sliders based on your preference. Blur reduction is useful when fast-moving objects look less sharp. For example, during sports, racing, or quick camera movement, while judder reduction is more about smoothing low frame rate content, especially movies or shows where camera panning can look a little uneven. We also have clear motion, which is meant to improve motion clarity by making fast movement look cleaner and sharper. The trade-off here is that depending on the content, it can slightly change the natural cinematic feel or make the image look less bright. Noise reduction reduces noise, but it depends on the content. Sometimes you may want to keep it on standard or high, especially with lower quality streams or older broadcasts, while other times it's better to turn it off to avoid an overly smooth image and washed out details. Finally, we have picture size for aspect ratio, but it's actually locked in this case, as well as BIP, picture in picture. Now let's exit picture settings and head to sound. Here we can select the sound output, set Bluetooth speakers, and access Q-Symphony settings. I currently do not have a Q-Symphony supported sound device to show you what's actually possible to do with it. But we can also change the sound mode between standard and amplified. Now I would like you to listen to the TV speakers so you can also judge between the difference between the two modes for yourself, standard and amplify for sound modes. I will play the same audio in standard mode and then in amplify mode so you can get an idea of how the built-in speakers sound and listen for yourself the difference between those modes. And let me know which mode you prefer in the comments below. Here we are. In my opinion, amplify mode gives the sound a bit more depth and make it feel a little fuller. So yeah, it's not the best audio setup ever, but for a built-in TV speakers, it's actually quite decent. The volume is good enough, and for normal TV use, they are totally fine. Of course, if you pair the TV with a Q Symphony soundbar, the experience should become much more immersive. In the expert settings for sound, we have control over balance, equalizer, HDMI EARC mode toggle, and digital output audio format, which can be set to auto, PCM, or pass-through. Despite the fact that Dolby Vision is not supported on this TV, but Dolby Atmos is actually supported, even through the built-in TV speakers. Another cool option is simultaneous optical audio output. With it on, you can hook up any kind of TV speaker or a soundbar that can be connected to optical audio to the TV and have the TV speakers on while also your other sound device. This way you have more of an immersive sound system without using Q Symphony. We also have AuraCast, which is a brand new feature that transmits sound to any number of supported Bluetooth devices, so it can play sound on multiple devices at once. You can also tune audio quality and set a password for protection. So that's it for sound. Let's now head to connections. Here we can control network and Bluetooth settings and enable auto connect Bluetooth for the last connected devices. We also have a quick share which transfers photos wirelessly from Galaxy devices to the TV. Multi-control allows you to use a connected keyboard and mouse to control all other connected devices all at once, like phones, tablets, and Galaxy Books. We also have storage share, which access files from your Galaxy device on the TV if you want to open images or videos on the TV quickly. We also have link to Galaxy Watch for tracking workouts, as we saw from before. So, as you can see, if you have Galaxy devices, they work in harmony with the TV to create an ecosystem and allow you to unlock more exclusive and useful features. We also have Device Connection Manager, which allows phones and tablets connected to the home network to share content with the TV. And finally, the TV also supports Apple AirPlay and Google Cast. So we are done with connections. Let's head over to advanced features. Here we got some cool features like Live Translate, which uses AI to show subtitles in real time in the language you want. It's supported in some apps and cases For instance, it works on some channels on Samsung TV Plus.
Modern Olympics, just really hard luck for the organisers.
We have a set of different languages, including Korean, English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, Chinese, and Portuguese. At least these are the ones I found on my unit for now.
Big setback, wasn't it, in Sardinia? I was just centimetres offline, wasn't he? But just ripped the.
You can see that I now get subtitles below in Portuguese. You can also change it to another language dynamically.
Still totally on for Thierry, there's no question that Toyota dominated the first half. He didn't won every single rally so far.
Yeah.
As well as controlling font size, position, and whether to activate a text background. So in summary, it's cool, smart, and useful feature in case you need subtitles. Really great job to Samsung for doing this. Next up, we have AI mode settings, where we can turn AI mode on or off for picture and sound. We already saw AI picture mode and AI customization for image, but we also have AI sound mode settings. Here, for example, we get Active Voice Amplifier Pro, which analyzes voice volume level and ambient noise in real time to improve clarity. Adaptive Sound Pro analyzes the content audio and your surroundings in real time, then uses AI to remaster the sound. Honestly, I noticed a small improvement in sound clarity and depth with Adaptive Sound Pro, so I definitely recommend keeping it activated. We also have Adaptive Volume, which adjusts the volume based on usage habits so it does not become too loud all of a sudden. Next, we have a new feature on this TV called AI Sound Controller Pro, which can adjust volumes based on type, like voice, music, or effects. This way, you can reduce music to improve voice clarity, for example, or reduce effects, or even increase certain volume type. So it could become like a mixer and is quite handy in some cases. We also have AI Football Mode Pro, which is made specifically for football. As soon as the TV detects a football match, it turns on and provides optimal settings for football games. Now, voice is for the TV voice assistant. We can choose between Samsung Bixby and Amazon Alexa. Next we have is game mode settings. We will check that later once we reach the gaming section in this video. Then we have Now Brief. With it enabled, when the TV is completely off and you simply pass by it, it can turn on and show this nice dashboard with different widgets like weather, date, notes, smart home controls, Google Photos, and more. You can also change and sort those widgets, and there is actually a set of them available. You can also change, as you see, the wallpaper. In the settings, we can change user detection sensitivity, inactive schedule, or completely turn off user detection. And also you can set it to turn off automatically when idle after a certain time, as well as enabling night mode so it doesn't turn on at night. There is also widgets auto loop frequency or activate auto adjustment based on how often you use them. With Now Brief done, let's check other parts. In start screen options, for example, we can choose what happens when the TV turns on. For example, you can choose whether the TV should automatically open Smart Hub Home when it powers on. If you turn this off, the TV will not jump straight into the Smart Hub every time you turn it on. So for mainly PC use, this makes much more sense to me because I prefer the TV to stay on the current input instead of opening the smart interface automatically. You can also control other automatic start options, like when it turns on, it goes to Samsung TV Plus, multi-view casting, and mirroring. For my setup, especially when using the TV as a PC monitor, I prefer keeping most of these auto start options disabled. so the TV feels cleaner and less intrusive when it turns on. Let's now head to general settings. Here we have the accessibility features. There are several useful options, starting with voice guide, which reads and describes menus and options to help you navigate around the TV. Audio description can add spoken descriptions of what is happening on screen when supported by the content, while audio screen can read on-screen information aloud through voice guidance. Auto picture off is also useful because it turns off the screen while keeping the sound playing. So if you want to listen to music, a podcast, or any audio without keeping the OLED panel on, you can use this option. When the screen is off, by pressing almost any button except power or the volume buttons, it turns the screen back on. We also have a magnification, which lets you zoom in on the image or text. You can adjust the zoom level and move around the screen using the remote directions buttons. Then we have other visual accessibility options like high contrast, grayscale mode, and color modes for color blindness. There are also subtitle settings, sign language zoom settings, and multi-output audio, which lets you use the TV speakers and the Bluetooth audio device at the same time. So it could be useful actually. Remote button repeat settings are available too, so you can slow down the repeat rate and adjust how long you need to press and hold a button before an action is triggered. There is also an accessibility shortcut which appears when you press and hold the volume button, making it easier to quickly access the most important accessibility tools. And finally, there is an option to reduce text and image animations, which can be helpful for people who are sensitive to motion on screen. Let's now go to power and energy saving. We have a set of power saving features as you see, starting with brightness optimization. This uses the environmental light sensor to adjust the screen brightness based on the lighting in your room, which can help reduce power consumption. We can also define a minimum brightness level, so the TV does not become over bright nor too dim. Then we have motion lighting, which reduces energy consumption by adjusting the brightness based on the movement in the image. We also have auto power saving, which can automatically turn off the screen when the TV doesn't detect anyone nearby through the remote control or Wi-Fi. Just keep in mind that nearby Wi-Fi devices may affect how this feature behaves. And finally, we have auto power off and sleep timer, which lets the TV turn off automatically after a selected time or when it has been inactive. Moving on from here, broadcasting lets you configure broadcasting settings. We also have parental settings to lock programs, channels, or apps based on age. In External Device Manager, we can enable AnyNet Plus, and it's actually crucial to have it on in case you have eARC connected. So make sure to keep it on. Input Signal Plus expands bandwidth for HDMI inputs, so make sure it's actually on. We can also control HDMI black level, and we will check it in a bit. We can also control different things like time, language, menu style lets us change the size and transparency of the menu. Keyboard and mouse settings allows us to change the keyboard language and type. For the mouse, we can change the pointer, primary button, and pointer speed. Now in remote control, we can view details about the connected remote control and check its current charge percentage. Sound feedback setting controls the sound it makes when you navigate through menu. You can also set a pin to lock access. And finally, we have factory data reset, which resets all TV data back to default. And another option that is called reset that simply restarts the TV. In support, we have device care, where the TV can check any problems or give you some suggestions to improve image or sound. You can also manage storage by deleting unneeded apps, request Samsung support, and reset Smart Hub to default. Maintenance mode is useful when you need to send the TV for repair or service. It helps protect your privacy by limiting access to personal information currently set on TV and only allowing the basic functions needed for servicing. Remote management, on the other hand, is for remote support from Samsung. If you contact Samsung support With this option on, they can connect to the TV remotely, view and control it with your permission, and help diagnose issues. In software update, we can check for software updates. Currently, as of this recording, the version is 1122. You can also enable auto update for convenience. Now we are done with all settings found on the TV. We check basically every part of it. I want to show you some real HDR content running on the screen. This is where the image quality really starts to speak for itself. Bright highlights have that strong OLED impact, and dark scenes still keep that deep, clean black level that makes OLED so special. The first thing I notice is how vivid, clean, and premium the image looks. Colors have that OLED richness, but with this model especially, it really feels much brighter, punchier, and more energetic than I expected. The highlights are honestly very beautiful: bright reflections, small light sources, shiny objects, skies, and colorful scenes all have a real pop to them. But what I like here is not only that the image is bright or colorful, it's a combination of brightness, contrast, depth, and color richness. The blacks stay deep, the highlights stand out, and the whole image has that premium, almost three-dimensional look that makes HDR content feel more alive and sharp. I also think the NQ4 AI Gen 3 processor plays a big role here. It feels like the TV is trying to refine the picture scene by scene, giving objects and shapes more natural, making colors wave, improving depth, and giving bright areas more impact without completely losing control. Everything feels more dynamic and more immersive. This is the kind of image where you do not just say, yeah, just look good, you actually feel the upgrade. So yeah, just from this HDR content alone, the image quality already feels like one of the strongest parts of this TV and very enjoyable to watch. With that premium OLED contrast and a lot of extra punch from Samsung processing. Here I am now connected to a PC and I have game mode on. When you activate game mode, the picture mode is locked and set to game. But in expert settings, we still have access to all settings for fine-tuning the image. For PC, I feel like setting HDR tone mapping to static is also the best. I use the same settings as before for a set it once and forget it. Inside advanced features, we now have game mode settings available. And inside we have the following settings. Minimap auto detection automatically detects the minimap area in supported games when you use minimap zoom feature. So instead of manually selecting the minimap position every time, the TV can recognize it and help enlarge that area more easily. We have surround sound, which creates a 3D soundscape for a more immersive gaming experience. Dynamic black equalizer is meant to fine-tune and control blacks. For me, setting it to 3 is the absolute sweet spot, because I can see all the details in dark areas while still not feeling like the blacks are over brightened or dark gray. Game motion settings are disabled, but when using consoles, they can become available depending on the source and settings. I actually used it before with the Nintendo Switch 1, and for some 30 FPS games, the difference was significant. It made the image feel much smoother and reduced that choppy, juddery feeling you often get from slower frame rates. It can make 30 FPS games feel more fluid and more enjoyable to play. Game Picture Expert has HDR 10 Plus Gaming, and you can set it between off, basic, and advanced. Based on my experience, I prefer having it on advanced. Keep in mind that there is no Dolby Vision support with Samsung TVs, but instead we get Samsung HDR 10 Plus. Now HDR 10 Plus Gaming is Samsung's own fine-tuned HDR feature, while Game HDR works in accordance with the HGIG guideline for optimal image quality set for HDR games according to content brightness information. But when it's on, Color Booster Pro gets locked. So this way I can't use one of my favorite image enhancement settings the way I personally like. That's why for my taste, I just feel like it's not the right mode for me to use. To open the game bar, press and hold the play button on the remote for 2 seconds. Now, one thing that stood out to me and seems to be a new addition compared to last year's S90F model is the AI Gaming Optimizer. This feature uses Samsung AI engine to automatically optimize the image setting for games based on its genre. When you turn it on, as you can see, the game genre selection gets locked because the TV now handles that automatically. You can still access options like dynamic black equalizer and picture expert settings for some fine tuning. But keep in mind that also in this case, Color Booster Pro gets locked. And for me, that's honestly a deal breaker because I really love that feature. Instead, if you keep AI Gaming Optimizer turned off, you get access to the game genre settings. Here you have presets based on the type of game, like RPG, RTS, FPS, sports, or auto. You can also create your own custom profiles. There are 2 custom profiles to be used. So in my case, I created my settings on custom 1. It combines all the settings I showed you before, and for me, it gives the best possible image I managed to get out of this TV. We have Game Motion Plus, but as I mentioned before, for PC use, it's locked. We also have Virtual Aim Point, where you can choose different crosshair shapes and adjust the position on the screen. Then we can change the screen ratio from 16:9 to 21:9 or even 32:9 if you want a wider view. When using these wider ratios, you will get black bars at the top and bottom. And you can use the channel up and down buttons on the remote to adjust the screen position. There is also a minimap zoom feature, although in my PC setup, it's not available. In more settings, we get access to the same game mode settings along with sound output settings. Inside the game mode settings, there is also an option to show the game bar automatically whenever game mode is on. So, if every time you turn on the TV or switch to your gaming source, you see the game bar popping up. Turning this option off solves that. Personally, I don't need to have the game bar showing up every time because I don't make changes frequently. Instead, I can open it manually when needed. Now, as I mentioned before, HDMI plug level is found in External Device Manager, and we can change it between auto, low, and normal. I personally prefer keeping HDMI plug level on low for my setup because on normal or even auto, which look almost the same to me, the image feels like it has a gray or dusty filter over the whole screen. To me, blacks look quite lifted and contrast feels much weaker. And honestly, it doesn't give me that deep OLED look I expect from this kind of panel. With low, the black level becomes much deeper and more convincing. Objects look more defined and there is a better separation between bright and dark parts of the image. It also makes colors feel richer, not because it's simply adding saturation, but because the contrast foundation is stronger. When the blacks are properly deep, highlights pop more. For me, the best setting is HDMI black level on low. I know some people may disagree with this, and I already had some comments in the past about how bad it is to use low instead of normal or auto. You want to avoid washed out blacks, but also avoid crashing shadow details. In my setup, low gives me the best black level I expect from OLED, like on PC, on consoles, whenever it is like an HDMI input for me, setting it on low is the best choice. It gives me the black level I expect from OLED with deeper blacks, stronger contrast, better object definition, and a much more impactful image. I would like to show you some display settings I have for Windows. Naturally, I have HDR on, and you can change HDR content brightness in Windows. I have it set to 15. For me, this is good enough to see HDR content on Windows just fine without making it overly bright. But however, it's actually important to calibrate your HDR color profile on Windows. To do that, install Windows HDR calibration for free from Microsoft Store. It's officially made by Microsoft. The Windows HDR calibration app is very simple and it works similarly to other HDR calibration tools. You basically adjust each slider until the pattern or the lines inside the box in this case are no longer visible. For minimum luminance, I set it to 0 nits. Since this is an OLED panel, pixels can essentially turn off completely, so the black level is extremely deep. Then for maximum luminance, I set it to 1000 nits. This is the value where the small highlights pattern disappears for me. So Windows understand how bright the display can get for peak HDR highlights. For max full frame luminance, I know this one may sound odd, but for me it ends up at 2300 nits. Normally on an OLED TV, full screen brightness is usually much lower than small highlights brightness. So I don't want to make it sound like the whole screen is actually outputting 2300 nits. This is more about how the Windows calibration pattern behaves with this TV. On lower values than 2300 nits, I can still see the lines inside the box, so I keep adjusting it until the lines disappears out of it. At the end, you can also adjust color saturation. I usually keep it at default because I already adjusted colors at the TV level with settings like Color Booster Pro, so I don't need to add extra digital saturation from Windows. After that, you can name the HDR profile and save it. Now in Windows display settings, as you see, the color profile is automatically set after HDR calibration to the ones we created. Now if we go into advanced display settings, Windows now reports a peak brightness of 1000 nits. We also have 4K HDR enabled, the output bit depth showing as 12 bit, and the maximum refresh rate of this TV goes up to 165 Hz. It also supports variable refresh rate in the 49 to 165 Hz range. In NVIDIA app, I have G-Sync enabled for variable refresh rate support. You can also go into the output color settings, change it from default color settings to NVIDIA color ones, and manually adjust the output. In the NVIDIA app, the 12-bit output color depth option is available in my setup. By setting it this way, it's able to send a higher bit depth signal that can help preserve smoother gradients and reduce visible banding in some cases. I also have the output color format set to RGB and the dynamic range set to full. And finally, the desktop color depth left at the default 32-bit. With my setup, this combination gives me the cleanest and most impactful image, the best possible. Testing it across different motion tests, it's actually very impressive. I didn't notice any kind of response issues or latency. It's smooth at 165 Hz. Of course, on my camera, motion results may not show perfectly for you as you watch. There are specific tests for those things, but as I cannot perform them for you guys as I don't have those tools. Still, in real life, I think it's actually very impressive based on my actual experience. I can tell you that I didn't encounter any response issues. It's a buttery smooth display with no problems. The image looked nicely calibrated, black, white, all colors feel alive and vivid to me. Given that this TV is WOLED, some text fringing is to be expected with WOLED. When you have small text, you can see it, but to me, it's not that horrible. Another thing I want to mention is the brightness auto-limiting, because this is something people usually worry about with OLED. Of course, like any OLED, there is automatic brightness limiting when you show very bright, full screen content to avoid OLED damage and burn-in. But in my experience, it doesn't feel too aggressive here. Even with a full frame wide screen, the display still feels bright enough and very usable, especially for desktop use I'm talking here. The only thing I occasionally notice is a very slight OLED type flicker or brightness pulsing in some situations. I wouldn't describe it as a major issue, but if you are very sensitive to flicker, it's something to keep in mind. But some level of a brightness, deep or flicker behavior is normal on OLED displays. For me, it hasn't ruined the experience that much, but I prefer mentioning it because I want this review to be as honest as possible. And of course, viewing angles are not an issue with this coating plus OLED. The image does not distort, shift, change, bend, or anything like that from any angle, at least to the naked eye. This TV is exceptional for gaming. It's fast, smooth, vivid, bright, and incredibly immersive. It's the kind of gaming experience where the image has real punch, the motion feels clean, and everything just feels more alive. On PC especially, this is where the S90H really feels like a monster. You get 4K, OLED contrast, 165Hz, variable refresh rate, extremely fast response time, and this very clean, bright, detailed image that makes games much more enjoyable. Like highlights are very bright, and honestly compared to the last year S90F 42-inch that I used for a year, this one already feels brighter and clearer to my eyes. Of course, I will compare them properly side by side in an upcoming video, so I don't want to jump too far ahead, but just from using it for a little bit, the S90H gives me the impression of a more powerful and more refined image. Details are easier to notice in games like Cyberpunk, for example. I can see much more details than ever. Like you see the walls, the graffiti on it. I can read all of them. Like I can literally see everything. Like neon lights, reflections, small textures, and nice city areas like in Cyberpunk 2077 feel more visible and more defined. I don't know if this is mainly because of the new coating, the panel itself, or its tuning, the processing, or literally a combination and maturity of everything. But the image really feels cleaner and more readable to me. Like it's much sharper and like you see more details than ever. Like I can see in an open world games, I can see much more details than before. The blacks are still deep, but the TV does not feel overly dark or closed in. Bright highlights pop strongly, colors have a lot of energy, and small details in the environment stand out more. That is exactly the kind of display that makes me excited for the huge open world games like the upcoming GTA 6, a bright 42-inch OLED with deep black, strong HDR impact, vivid colors, 165Hz refresh rate, and great gaming features feels like the perfect setup for exploring detailed game worlds. Now I have the PS5 Pro connected and I wanted to show you the difference between having pixel shift on versus off. You can see how the image can get clipped with nothing you can really do about it. In this case, the edges of the circles are slightly cut off. The only way to show them properly with pixel shift on is to reduce the display area from the console settings. But that also means losing some screen real estate. So for my usage, I don't see it as worth it, despite the fact that burn-ins are still possible if you keep static elements on screen for a very long period. But for games, since the image is usually moving constantly, I personally worry less about it. But of course, this is a personal choice. For PS5, you can see that the TV supports variable refresh rate from 48 to 120 Hz, HDR, and all the supported output features up to 4K. It also supports auto low latency mode or ALLM, which helps minimize display latency on TVs. I have RGB range set to full and I adjusted HDR by setting the minimum, maximum, and full frame luminance until the sun symbol in this case was no longer visible as recommended. Keep in mind that I am still using the same game mode image settings on TV that I showed earlier on PC. And on PS5, the result is amazing. The image looks sharp, the HDR impact is strong, and the colors are very beautiful. Highlights have a real sparkle, and the whole image has that cinematic OLED look while still feeling fast and responsive for gaming. This is a kind of console experience where you immediately get a very immersive next-gen image. It feels bright, clean, colorful, and ready for big cinematic games, especially future open world titles where HDR, contrast, and detail visibility can make a huge difference. Now, on Nintendo Switch 2, I also have HDR on with 4K output supported, along with the maximum refresh rate available from the console, which is 120 Hz. And ALLM again, or auto low latency mode, is active as well. RGB range is set to full. In my setup, full gives much better black levels than limited. You can see that with limited the image looks more grayish and washed out, while full gives deeper and more accurate blacks. I adjusted HDR and for me, the best brightness after setting HDR is 7 step from zero, like the brightness slider after you set HDR. So just before the middle. This way I can keep good details visibility without making the image look too flat or overexposed. The result is amazing on Switch 2 as well. The image is clean, colorful, and very enjoyable. As you see, like colors have that playful Nintendo style pop. Blacks look amazing and the whole experience feel much more modern and responsive. So overall, image on Switch is very great. Again, I didn't change my game mode picture settings on the TV. I'm using the same setting I showed earlier because for me, they give the best balance of brightness, contrast, color, and depth across all type of content I play on it. So in summary, this TV is amazing. For me, it sets a new standard for OLED TVs. It's bright, vivid, sharp, smooth, and incredibly immersive. The colors are beautiful, HDR content has real impact, blacks are deep, highlights pop, and the image has this clean, premium look that make everything feel more alive. What impressed me the most is the clarity. The image feels more open, more detailed, and more readable than I expected. In games and everything you play on it literally, you can see more texture, more of the shape, more definition, more separation, more depth, more small details in the environment. For a WOLED TV, it also feels seriously bright with the beautiful colors, very vivid and amazing, with strong highlights and a very satisfying HDR impact. The anti-reflective coating is also one of the best parts of the experience in my opinion. It makes the TV feel more premium, more usable, and more comfortable for many, especially when using it on a desk as both a TV and a monitor for productivity. For PC, PS5, and Switch 2, like in summary for all gaming consoles, the image is honestly fantastic. It's not only about specs, it's about how everything comes together. The NQ4 AI Gen 3 processor working behind the scenes to make the picture feel cleaner, punchier, and more refined. Honestly, it really exceeded my expectations. I was already very happy with the last year S90F 42-inch, but this S90H feels like a serious step forward in the areas that matter to me. At this point, I can say it has become my best TV ever. But of course, I'm really looking forward to comparing it directly side by side against last year S90F 42-inch OLED TV, because that will show exactly how much has changed and where the biggest differences really are. So make sure you stay tuned for that upcoming comparison because that one is going to be very interesting and is actually coming soon. So guys, I really hope that you found this review helpful. In case you did, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what you think about the S90H 42-inch OLED TV from Samsung. Thank you a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next one.